Welcome to Necessi-Tea. I'm Lindsay Jackson.
And I'm Marguerite Pierce. Today, ladies and gents, we are going to be talking about guilt.
Dun, 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 dun.
Clink, clink, the Law and Order. But not that type of guilt, not like Law and
Not
Order.
guilty.
Yeah, but, the emotion of guilt. And to kick things off, I'm just going to read a brief definition of what guilt is. Guilt often comes as a result of a conflict between enjoyment and a perceived negative outcome of your actions. And I think the first place for us to start to tackle is mommy guilt. Y'all know. It's real. It's real. So Lindsay's going to kick things off and tell us how mommy guilt has shown up for you recently.
Mommy guilt doesn't leave, right? Because I feel like,
permanent
showing
residence.
Paying taxes. You understand? Mommy guilt is residing in my home, in my soul, ever since I gave birth. There's that mommy guilt. So I think of Savannah, and she just took a test. All the students took a test, a reading test and a math test at school. And a letter came home and said that Savannah had scored lower than their school average. Now, at this school, their average is higher than the district.
Okay.
So, their goal is to get all their students up into their level, their standards, which is understandable. Anyway, but the result would be that Savannah would have to be taken out of class to go to like a reading special. And she already goes to a reading tutor. So I didn't want her to get taken out of class. So I told them that we will not take their recommendation, that we will continue to use our tutor and just watch her progress. But when that happened, it caused some guilt. Right? I started to feel guilty of, am I giving Savannah enough time at home? Am I giving her enough attention? Are we spending enough time going over her homework? Are we doing extra things around the house that help her improve her reading when we're going out? I just started questioning, am I doing enough? And I started thinking about work and how often I'm at work because I got to work, right? And I'm there Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. And by the time I get to her and we have to continue the routine, there's not enough time to spend time. So then I feel guilty for that too. Then sometimes I feel guilty for rushing her to bed because I've had a long day or a long week and I just want to chill. I want to drink a glass of wine. And I feel horrible often, for doing that. Feeling horrible for wanting to create time for myself, and then also feeling horrible that we don't get enough time so that she can get more of what she needs. And one more thing, I have a little abandonment issues, right? And so then that also triggers some guilt for me because am I spending enough time with her? Will she feel loved? Does she feel abandoned? And I mean, I know that she feels loved and know that she's loved, but it's just kind of in my own subconscious, and it's something that I pay attention to even when it's not there.
Right. So there's like, what was that, 4 different layers of guilt?
Of all
the mommy guilt showing up in 4 different ways. And, when you combine all of it, I think at the end of it all, like what's really bothering you? Like what's the one thing, if you could name one thing?
I think the biggest one, through therapy really, is that abandonment one. I think that one really is shows up more than, anything else. Me making sure that she doesn't feel abandoned. And also, I think my own insecurity about like my own experience with like academics.
Okay.
Because my mom too also worked a lot. So when I came home from school, I was there with my grandmother. I wasn't necessarily getting, extra time all the time. My mom did, help me with my work and such, but it wasn't as consistent. And so I want to be that consistent for her, but I now see what the hell my mother was working against and why she couldn't be consistent, why she couldn't do those things. Because you go to work, you still got to come home, cook the dinner, feed, then check the homework, give them a bath or shower, whatever stage they're at, and then still get them to bed at a decent hour because you got to wake them up early.
Right. And so is the question that's going through your mind, am I a good enough mother because my kid scored below the test, the school standard?
Yes. Am I a good enough mother? And is this the right decision? What if there is a deficiency? And I'm so focused on the systems that are in place and how they try to label Black kids and trying to, put her on a path to special ed or whatever. And I know she's a smart kid, but what if there is a little deficiency and I'm holding on to this so much that I'm missing, right? Something that she really needs. So am I messing up on that? So yeah, totally. Am I good enough mom? Hell yeah. And I think that that's where our mom guilt comes from. And depending on what our experiences were as children and with our own parents, then we may feel even more guilt. You know how like some people are like, their parents were really effed up. So they're like, I'm not going to be nothing like my parent. And then you yell and scream at your kid like your parents screamed at you, which you hated. Right. You feel guilty for that. And that kind of like weighs on you a little bit more because of your childhood experiences.
It's like, you have something in your mind that you want to avoid, but your attempt to avoid it is actually you doing it.
Because it's not even really like your attempt, it's your brain.
Right.
Your brain already has the template in place to give that response.
Foundation.
Right? So that's going to be your default, like we've referred to before, but it's going to be that default. So even though it's like, I'm not going to be anything like my daddy, right? That's going to be your default because that's your exposure. That's the pattern. That's the template that's in your brain. And that's going to be your brain's automatic response until you put something else in place.
Right.
And what could go in place of guilt? Right? So like when that is triggered, what do we replace it with?
Yeah, I think the easy answer or the answer that comes to my mind is love, right? Love or time, right? So if you think you're not doing enough, then it's like maybe a easy solution is like, okay, well, maybe put some time on the calendar to specifically do the thing that you're feeling guilty of not doing.
Right. Well, will that change that feeling of guilt, like right then and there? So let's say, for example, I feel guilty tonight for not giving enough time to my kid, right? But now I'll go downstairs to the calendar and put in, all right, tomorrow I'm going to make sure I do X, Y, and Z. Does that make me feel better about the guilt that I'm feeling right now and still hopeful about the next day? Like, because I'm thinking of how to even not have guilt be that response. Right? Where like maybe self-compassion is it.
Yeah, but I think great question. But I think part of it is acknowledging that you did the best that in the moment, right? Even though you're kicking yourself, you're looking at what's ahead of you and you prioritized in some way. Like you did make a decision. Right? Like I'm making a decision to leave work at this time, pick Savannah up, make whatever I'm making for dinner. Like these are all conscious decisions that we're making, and you need to give yourself credit for making those decisions and then maybe do something a little bit different the next time.
Yeah. I mean, I'm already thinking of how I can change my schedule at work, which is going to be really hard to do, but not impossible.
Right.
So that I can get off at least an hour earlier, get to her a little bit earlier, get home a little bit earlier.
Yep.
But then also, I need to use my slow cooker more.
Yeah.
You know those tips that they gave moms, like when you first have a baby, they're like, look, use your slow cooker, freeze food. That stuff applies like all throughout motherhood. You know, so I'm thinking, I'm going to just throw out some chicken and when I get home, I'm going to cook it.
Right. And just like, yeah, it's work smarter.
Yeah, not harder. And stressing myself out.
Right.
Because I got to rush now. There's food. So maybe it's not as much love in it because I need to hurry up and make it so you can hurry up and eat it. So you can hurry up and get in the bath so you can hurry up and go to bed so I can hurry up and have a glass of wine.
Right. It's just like this just rushing mentality. But meal prep, I feel like it would solve a lot of problems.
Facts. No, seriously.
Because you get the time back. And so now you have those pockets of time to sit. And then now you can work with Savannah on her reading. Or you could just spend time with her. It doesn't even have to be related to the test or whatever.
But I hate those tests. I don't trust those tests. No, I really don't. And then I think of her own emotional state. They took the test on the computer. What were her emotions like? Did she get enough rest that day?
Right. Did she have breakfast?
Right. Yeah. Was it the day after the holiday we just had? What was that, like Columbus Day or something like that, right? Was it right after that? Because she went to bed late. And so maybe she was a little tired. So that's why I'm just like really not allowing myself to get sucked into their results or whatever. But yeah, totally like, damn, am I doing the right thing?
Yeah, no, but I think I think with guilt it could I don't know if it does. I think it does more harm than it does good. Like, I mean, Psychology Today had an article in it and it explained or introduced guilt as a pro-social emotion, right? Like something that we use to figure out like the appropriate behavior or action that we should take. So like one of the examples they use in the article was like, if it's like Mother's Day or a holiday or your friend's birthday and you're like, oh, it's Mother's Day. I gotta, call mom and wish her happy Mother's Day. And then like, if you don't take action immediately, like you'll get another little ding, like a little reminder, like a notification in your head and your brain, right? Damn, the smartphones, now I'm comparing our brains to smartphones.
It's crazy.
What the hell? Anyway, but y'all get what I'm saying. And it'll keep going off until you do the action that satisfies those notifications.
And then when you don't do it, boom, here comes guilt.
Here it comes. And I recently had this experience. This was back in August. There's a bunch of my friends, there's I don't know, half a dozen of us who have birthdays in the month of August, right? And so this one day, it was like one of my best friend's birthday. And I woke up and I was like, oh, it's Angie's birthday. And I'm like, okay. And I get ready, I go to work, and my friend Michelle's there. I was like, oh, Michelle, it's Angie's birthday. And I still didn't, I'm doing all these things, but I didn't call her. I didn't send a text. I didn't go on Instagram. I didn't do anything. And then lo and behold, it's like I'm in the bed or now I'm waking up and it's the next morning. I'm like, well, damn.
It's not Angie's birthday no more.
It's not her birthday anymore, and I didn't even call. My bad, Ange. But what did I do? I felt bad in the moment, but then I called her.
Right.
Then I called her, and I apologized profusely, and she gave me crap about it for a little bit, but I moved on. But guilt, it could be useful, even though I didn't take advantage of it.
Right.
When it popped in my mind. For that pro-social emotion that Psychology Today explained it as. But
that's so crazy too, because you even talk about calling her the next day, because sometimes when we feel guilty we don't take that step, and it's like, oh man, I didn't call her. I can't call her today because I didn't even call her on her birthday. I can't call her now. And next thing you know, a week has gone by, you have not called your best friends, and now it is worse. Now you're
calling in the next month. Now you're calling in September for a birthday that was in August.
And if some people are not even self-aware, you know what they do? They call and just be like, hey, and not even mention it
or
nothing.
No, I cannot do that.
How was your birthday? Now was nothing. Maybe not even like your pictures, because then I'm gonna act like I was oblivious to your whole birthday experience because I feel like crap for not calling you on your birthday. But that's how guilt will just override and take the shit over.
Right, and then just literally like drop a bomb on the whole situation, like something that wasn't as bad.
Said. Yes.
And it wasn't as bad. Now it's terrible because you're just trying to cover your guilty ass tracks.
Yeah. And depending on how far you let it go, you could lose a friend.
Right.
Because then,
no, it's just, but it
spirals.
It spirals, and I think it shows up in so many different like relationships, friendships, like parenthood, and things like that. But I know we started talking about mommy guilt, but it definitely takes on these other roles or shows up in within all of our relationships. And on the mommy guilt thing, I really struggled with going back to work, like after having Simone, like, and like, oh, is this real? Do I really have to do this? I got to leave my, 4-month, 5-month-old. And it's just like, that really sucked. And I just felt, it took me a really long time to reconcile that, that it was going to be okay and that I'm not less than because I'm a working mom.
Right.
And that like there's some ideas that you get in your head that being a stay-at-home mom is like at the top, and then everything else falls beneath it. And it's just like, well, no, there's more than one way to skin a cat, right? And not all options work for all people. That's why there are options, right? So you have the ability to pick and choose what's best for you and your family. But I guess it's just like a point of reference. Like my mom stayed home with me and Sam for as long as I can remember. Really? I think till about like kindergarten or first grade.
That's so
and then she worked as a teacher. So she was off when we were off. So in the summer, we going to the zoo, doing everything. Like we had a lot of time with our mom.
That's so awesome.
And so like I think about that and I'm just like, ugh. In comparison, like, I'm not there as much for Simone as my mom was there for me at the age that Simone is now.
I feel guilty for not feeling guilty for wanting to leave my kid at that mark, right? So when it was time to go back to work, I was ready to like talk to adults.
Okay.
Yeah. But I felt guilty for wanting to go back to work.
Oh, see, it could,
because I think it depends on the individual.
Right.
Right? So there was this need still for me to just kind of change my space, change my environment, change what these daily routines were. So I wanted to go back to work.
Right. And I think it's because of where we place the joy, right? So going back to how we opened, so guilt often comes as a result of conflict between enjoyment and a perceived negative outcome of your actions, right? So in my mind, it's like, stay at home. That's the goal. Like that has the gold medal next to it. If I'm doing something other than that, oh, that's not good.
Right.
What you're doing is not good. But then on your side, you're like, oh, I want the adult interaction. Like this is what I want. Like my kid is going to be fine.
Right.
Whatever daycare or care options you went with. But and then you're looking at it as like the joy comes from you going to work. And then now the other thing is the bad thing.
Yeah. And when I was reading even about guilt, they talk about how guilt comes from childhood and how our parents or how parents, everybody's parent, kind of uses guilt to manipulate children and change their behavior, right? You do something wrong and then we say, look at how you made mommy feel, or look, oh, you hurt my feelings. So we plant these little seeds of guilt to get them to change their behavior. So the
Right.
disapproval and the disappointment that we have, right? We express it to our kids, then we are using guilt and planting that seed of external approval. So now I need to conform and have behaviors that will result in approval.
Right.
And when I don't, I feel guilty for it.
Right. And it's interesting because there is an external piece of it and like the validation aspect, but at the same time, we're all responsible for our own emotions, right? Because like to a degree, I think like the feeling of guilt, it's like really internal. Like it's something that we create for ourselves. And then it's funny because then I think about, well, if someone doesn't feel guilty about something that society or a group might think is bad or poor behavior, then we call those people like selfish or out of touch or
rebels.
Or something. It's because it doesn't align with
doesn't conform.
Exactly, because it's outside of the conformity of it.
And guilt is an uncomfortable feeling. So we
It's
will
really,
conform to free ourselves from the guilt, right?
Right.
So even if I feel guilty for letting you down, I told you that I was going to come out tonight and I got a headache, I had a really long day, I will feel guilty for disappointing you and letting you down by saying I can't come out. But instead, I'm not going to choose myself.
Right.
So now I come out with my headache, my upset stomach, and being tired,
right.
and be on my my Eeyore
shenanigans.
So yeah, guilt will cause you to be so uncomfortable, and it is internal. But I think it's our personal experiences with guilt, and that's why it shows up different for everybody,
right? In terms of what you would feel guilty for. Like we just had like completely opposite
experiences about going back to work.
Right. It's wild.
And who I will feel guilty with. Like I would feel guilty about that with people who put staying at home longer at a higher standard, right? Where I wouldn't feel as guilty about it when I'm talking to people who are all right with going back to work and can understand where I'm coming from. So I think it's also, again, that external disapproval comes on both ends.
Yeah. No. It's a lot to think about and a lot to sit with and try to figure out, when guilt is showing up, like to your point, like what you can do in the moment. Like, yeah, there are things that you can do going forward, right? To change, right? To change like your schedule, you change your behavior. But in the moment, I think it's being able to ask ourselves certain questions to be able to pop that guilty bubble, right? So it's like confronting the problem and like then getting real clear on what you can do about it, right? Like what can you do to move forward? Okay, so you feel guilty about not spending enough time with your kid, but okay, so what are you going to do about it like in the next like 5 to 10 minutes?
Right. If I can. Or I could be a little self-compassionate and say, today, like what Heather talks about, what Story talks about.
Yeah, her quote stands out. Like the balance.
Got to find that balance, right? That today you could be a great mom. Tomorrow you could be a great employee. You'll be a great spouse, etc. So I think in that moment, part of asking those questions is, did I do the best that I could today? Right. And if the answer is yes, then I can practice some more self-compassion.
Right. And another one of the empowering questions is, how would you be able to live with that? Right. And I think to take that one a little bit further, there are other like versions of that. It's like you think about something that happened or something that you're stewing and you're ruminating on, and ask yourself, like, is this something that you're going to think about like tomorrow, next week, next month, next year?
Right.
And then, be able to adjust based off of the answers to those questions. Because a lot of times we're fretting over things that are minuscule in nature compared to our overall life experience or, your whole track record of motherhood or parenthood.
Right.
And you're dinging yourself for
this one or this week of whatever.
Exactly. Exactly. Exactly.
And I think also maybe asking yourself that question, what about this kind of fits into my own purpose, right? My purpose as a parent, is this belief really serving me, right? Because the guilt is tied to a belief, right?
Yes.
Or a value.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Connect with your values, like understand, right, what is being triggered, right? Because if you feel any of those well, I'm gonna use a coaching term. Any of those catabolic emotions, right? So catabolic is like destructive energy. So, I didn't want to say negative, so I'm going to use catabolic. So anytime you feel any of those catabolic emotions, it's probably because one of your values is being challenged.
Right.
Or contradicted in some way. So being able to get clear on what that is. And I think even connected to that is just being able to be clear on what your priorities are.
Yeah, but I guess it's also tough if like my priority is to get quality time with myself and get quality time with my kid. And I know that there are days when I have to be extremely proactive so I don't feel guilty, right? So just the other day, I had a really rough day at work. And I called a family member and asked them if they could pick Savannah up from school just so that I can get a time to myself before she came home. Because I didn't want to dump my stuff on her. I didn't want to be impatient with her, so I grabbed a straw, a bottle of Jack Daniels. No, I'm joking. But I had to, allow myself to decompress.
Right.
Before,
that's important.
because that day was just really rough and I was aware of it. And I was on my period. And so it was like emotions were really high. Patience were really low. And I knew that if I had Savannah come right home and she didn't listen to a directive, that I could potentially like lose my cool and yell at her unnecessarily.
Right.
And I would be displacing my anger and frustration, right? It would really be about my disappointment about the day.
Right.
Right. So really also being proactive. If I know my priority is to spend time with her and get that time for myself, I can really finagle it and also assess the risk, right? Because what's the risk if I put her first and not me first? The risk is that I'm going to yell at her. But I have to put me first right now so that I can get myself in order, get my emotions in line, and then I can give her that good quality time rather than that militant, aggressive time because I'm really pissed off about something else.
Right. So it's really important to make sure your mama's cup is full. No, that makes a lot of sense. And that just to have that self-awareness, like when you're kind of teetering on empty and you need to go and recharge and refuel.
Yeah, be proactive about it. And not everybody has that privilege, right? To call up somebody and say, hey, pick up my kid early.
Right.
Some of us have to get our kids right away or, go right into a situation or be with a loved one while we're carrying some, catabolic energies, right? So I think even those in the moment meditations, those, kindness meditation, there's a kindness meditation. And I think also when guilt is being triggered, go into that kindness meditation.
Right. Or just, find some affirmations or mantras that you could repeat to yourself to kind of change your mindset and change your energy and the emotions around it.
I think of Bruce. I want to say Bruce Perry, but that's the author. What's the Bruce from IPEC?
I see his face.
Yeah, I hear his voice. But
Schneider.
Thank you. Bruce Snyder, he says that one of his mantras that I always remembered from IPEC is, I am always and always more than I believe I am. That one is just so powerful, and it applies in every situation.
Right.
So when I'm feeling guilty, I go to that one. When I'm feeling disappointed and down and insecure, I always go to, I am always in always more than I believe I am.
Yeah. No.
Right? Because sometimes it's really what I believe I am.
Right. That you have to focus on. That's a really powerful one. My go-to one, because I'm always either in the past or in the future, is Deepak Chopra's. The past is gone. The future is not here. Now I am free from both. It keeps me in the present and laser focus into, okay, what am I working on now, and what's going to be like the immediate next step, and I just deal with that. To just be really intentional about how we're going on about our day.
I think of a morning routine also. If I know I have a really jam-packed calendar.
Yeah.
Because I'll check my calendar the night before to see what I have ahead. And so I will set my alarm early so that I can get some time in for myself, because I know that this will not happen again until 9, 10 o'clock at night. And that's not enough for me. So if I don't do it, then the day is going to be a lot more worse, because my energy is going to be off.
Right.
Totally off.
You just want to ground yourself, like whether that's like meditation or whatever your morning practice is. Find something to really fuel you and boost you up for a crazy day ahead.
So, and then that even leads to kind of like wellness guilt, right?
Yeah.
Like guilt for not taking care of ourselves.
Yes.
Guilt for eating some Krispy Kreme donuts.
Or some pizza for lunch.
And dinner. And a snack.
Maybe some ice cream. There's a day full of treats. Shout out to Dana.
Okay. Really? For real? Because I'm going to treat myself all damn day.
But then you feel bad. Like you feel bad emotionally, and then you feel bad physically too.
Body
because
feels
all
terrible.
The salt and sugar and stuff.
I'm tired and sluggish.
So, right. And you can't put two words together. The wellness guilt, right? And it's interesting because I read about something a few years back about how to, again, it's like with your intention, right? So they say, one bad meal begets another bad meal. So like if you have a donut for breakfast, you're going to get the pizza for lunch, and then it's easier to get the Chinese food for dinner, followed by the ice cream. But if you're intentional and you say, okay, I'm going to wake up, I'm going to have 2 hard-boiled eggs, a piece of toast, or oatmeal or whatever, then you're more
so boring.
Then you're more conscious when it comes to lunchtime to choosing
salad.
A more healthy option. And so you have that salad, and then you're pumped and you're feeling good. Your mind is sharp. And then you're like, oh, what am I going to do for dinner?
Salmon.
Maybe another salad, or some salmon.
Salmon on the salad.
Whatever. Right. And it just allows you to just be more conscious of what you're doing. So start your day with a healthy choice, because it could probably lead to more healthy choices throughout the day.
Right. And then you can let go of that, or avoid and prevent the wellness guilt.
Exactly.
Right? I think of wellness guilt of, I'm going to go to the gym and I've got the gym clothes in my bag, and the bag is in my car, and I've got the sneakers, everything. And as soon as 5 o'clock hits,
you're like, Jim who?
What? Pinot Grigio, what? And I'll pick that instead. I had a colleague call that grape therapy.
Your friends are really clever with the sayings. I love it.
So I, would have a lot of grape therapy. And that's not necessarily wellness, right? Because, we often associate drinking wine with self-care, and it is not, because, one, too much wine is going to cause you the craziest hangover the next day, and that is not self-care, Also thinking of the sugar and stuff, right? And that's causing, you to gain weight. So, but grape therapy.
Yeah, and then now I'm thinking about like where the mommy guilt and like the wellness guilt or self-care guilt intersect, right? Like if I'm trying to carve out time for myself, sometimes I have mommy guilt about that. Like even though I know I need to recharge or refuel, especially like when it's something like fun, right? Like we said at the beginning, like the enjoyment piece, like it really tackles me because I'm just like, oh, you know, you're responsible for this other human being. How are you going to be out here having fun?
Like you're not supposed to.
Like I'm not a human being. Like I'm not my own human being, right? It's so sometimes I struggle and I have to really talk myself out of it. A lot because like it's easy for me to rationalize my absence from Simone if it's work related or we're doing the podcast or we're working on a project or something that's going to have some like tangible effect or value or result versus like thinking about, oh, I just need to chill and collect my thoughts and blah, blah, blah. And you can't really touch those results. Like, yes, there are results because I'm more peace, I'm more mindful, I'm more present, and that affects my mood and how I interact with others. But yeah, it's just
in a way I feel like that's tangible though. You know why? I feel like we feel it with our body.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Right? So
yeah, I guess maybe tangible wasn't the right word.
Well, no, but I think it is. I understand what you mean by tangible, right? But I think another perspective of looking at how it still can be tangible can remove the feelings of guilt. Right? Because in a way, if I take care of myself, what becomes tangible is the good energy that I'm able to exchange with my child.
And my ability to take care of others.
Yeah. Right?
Yeah. And it's interesting because I understand that. And like hearing you say that, I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. And what I do is I'll feel the guilt but it'll be like temporary because I will still know that taking care of myself is valuable and I would still have to go see a movie by myself or whatever the action is, I still do it. It's just like the guilt like creeps in and, you know, I acknowledge it and then I have to send it on its way.
Right. But does it also take you like longer to do it? So you would have been like, oh, tomorrow night I'm going to go to the movies. But then all this guilt comes up and it ends up being the following weekend that you go to the movies. Or do you still just go?
I still just go. Like, so I've gotten really good at meeting it at the door and then letting it out. So I don't let it derail my self-care plans. It still shows up, but I never let it take over.
Man, I know that guilt can be paralyzing to some.
Yeah. You have to just let it, you have to do your best to let go. Whatever process that is for you, to really figure it out because the last thing we would want to do is have it be debilitating or paralyzing.
Yeah, and I think that can happen for moms, especially. I think of new moms with postpartum, that guilt can really just take over and really cause a destruction of self. Right? Through those feelings of guilt. So we've got to have good practices so that we can remove guilt.
Yep, and ask yourself, you know, empowering questions to get you out of it in the moment.
So let's close out with a quote. Okay? So guilt is to the spirit what pain is to the body. So understanding that it's important for us to free ourselves of that guilt so that our spirits can be light and be free and not carry the weight and pain.
Well said. Well said. Thanks. And now it's tea time. Ladies and gents, this week's tea time is going to be a little different. We're switching it up on you. This week, I want to share with you a speech that I performed at Toastmasters, which is in line with this episode's conversation on guilt and more specifically, mommy guilt. And it's called Solitude and Sagacity. So sit back. It's about 5 minutes, and I really hope you enjoy it. And if you haven't already done so, please subscribe to our podcast. Also, newsflash, we've updated our Instagram handle. You can now follow us at Necessi, the letter T, podcast. We're also now on Facebook and Twitter with the same handle, Necessi podcast. Thanks for listening. I am a huge proponent of solitude. It grants me peace, clarity, wisdom, and a broader perspective on things. It's part of my self-care. In June, I took my first solo trip outside of the United States. I was working in Ireland for a week and decided to extend my European visit with a long weekend in the Canary Islands. When I booked the trip, I was full of excitement and joy, daydreaming about the days that lie ahead, free from Doc McStuffins, the Muppet Babies, and Sesame Street, free from searching for car keys, wallets, and stuffed animals that aren't my own. But the closer I got to the trip, that energy and excitement waned and transformed into doubt and worry. You're going to be gone for 11 days. Are they gonna be all right? That's a long time to be away from home. You bought the insurance. Maybe you should just cancel and head right back home after the work portion is done. I didn't realize what I was doing in those moments. But after a day of sunbathing on the beach and basking in the glow of the 10 p.m. sunset on Gran Canaria, it dawned on me. I was both the victim and perpetrator of a serious crime. That crime, ladies and gentlemen, was self-care sabotage. I attempted to thwart my plans for rejuvenation and recharge, my plan to become whole again after so many of life's distractions and responsibilities had all taken their fair share. My cup was empty, and although I know I cannot pour from an empty one, I still considered it. I was willing to risk how I showed up in my relationship with my husband and how I showed up as a mother, because those things and a little rest and relaxation are mutually exclusive, right? That connection, though, is more of a cause and effect one. If I'm depleted, I'm not adding value to any of my relationships. My thinking was all backward. This wasn't the first time it happened, though. Self-care sabotage happens often when I have something fun planned for myself. Absences or late nights that are work-related, those are easily rationalized because that's providing for my family. That's contributing to the roof over our heads and the food on our table. Peace and solitude, those results aren't as tangible, so therefore they're less important. You see, self-care sabotage doesn't only affect you. In my case, my worry over my family's well-being in my absence was vain and egotistic. I'm making it seem as if my husband is inept or incompetent at holding things down while I'm away. I know this isn't true. I've been away for several days before, and guess what? The house didn't burn down. But in my head, I'm acting as if it did. My absence may make things challenging, but not impossible. The more I thought about how irrational this was, something else became clear. I recognized my second crime. Theft. When you constantly step in to do a task or handle a specific problem on behalf of someone else because they don't know what they're doing, or they just won't do it right, or They can do it, but not the way I do it, or any other variation. You are robbing that person of potential experience. This concept is best summarized through two Greek words, ginosko, which means to have knowledge of something, and yada, which means knowledge gained through experience. As an example, in my household, there is only one task that is solely my responsibility. It's doing Simone's hair. Now, I've done demonstrations on how to do her hair, and I could take it a bit further and write out step-by-step instructions on how to style her hair, but that all pales in comparison to my husband just sitting down with Simone and making an attempt to style her hair. That's the best way he's going to learn. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't want to be a criminal any longer. Think about all the times you ever talk yourself out of doing what it is that fills your cup. Those are all the times that self-care sabotage one. Those are all the times you rob someone of the experience of taking over your responsibilities in your absence. Don't you think it's time to tip the scale the other way? I know I do.